A hero is someone who is admired for their noble qualities, for their outstanding achievement, or for their courage. A hero is not someone with the most clicks, the most likes, or who is the most popular on social media. Be careful who you admire. Hi everybody, I'm Mary Ann Crocker, and I'm here to tell you my story about September 11th. I'm also going to talk to you about some heroes. But before I begin, I need to tell you something. To you, September 11th is something you learn about in the history books. To your parents, they remember exactly where they were, exactly what they were doing when they heard it or when they saw it, and they'll tell you. Every generation has their event. My parents had the event of JFK getting assassinated. Anybody back then will tell you exactly where they were when they heard the news. My generation has September 11th. Your generation will have something. We just don't know yet what it is. So let's talk about this. September 11th, there were 3 attacks on America. The first one we'll talk about is Flight 93 that went down in Shanksville. And as we all know now, Shanksville, PA was not the intended target. The plane was brought down by the passengers on board who decided to take a stand and fight back against the terrorists. And the reason they know to do this is because they were talking to people on the ground. When their flight was in trouble, they called home, and the people from home said, hey, bad stuff's happening here too, and they told their loved ones about the attack on the World Trade Center. So the passengers on that flight knew that this wasn't going to end well, but they went down swinging anyway, and every single one of those people were heroes. Todd Beamer, with his famous "Let's Roll," he and the other gentlemen on board decided to fight back. They even had flight attendants boiling water to fight back against the terrorists. And I'll tell you, I was listening to some of that and watching some of it earlier today, and I was sobbing. I just can't imagine going through something like that. I can't imagine having a loved one go through that. I can't imagine going through that. But they all went down as heroes. And then there's the Pentagon, Flight 77. A plane crashed into the Pentagon, killing people on board, killing people on the ground. As soon as that plane crashed, the minute it crashed, people started running towards the building to help. Those people were heroes. So now we're going to talk about September 11th. So this is my story. Tuesday, September 11th, was a beautiful day. I was commuting into Grand Central Station. I got off at Grand Central, hopped on a subway, and went down to the Wall Street Station. When I got off the subway, I walked up the stairs, and it was weird. Everybody was quiet, and they were all looking up. And I'm like, New Yorkers don't look up. But I looked up, and the World Trade Center was on fire. And I was like, oh my God, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. The World Trade Center was on fire. Well, just then my sister calls me, so I'm on the phone, and I'm looking at the Trade Center, and then I see a plane coming into the building, and it just kind of got sucked right into the building. It just got sucked in. And then it hit, and ashes and debris and everything was going all over the ground. And I'm talking on the phone, and my sister heard me say, oh my God. She heard screaming. And that was it. Then the phone died. So all this stuff is flying through the air. Papers from the 93rd floor. People are screaming and running and crying. And I thought, you know what? I know what it feels like to be an animal in a forest fire. Because I knew I had to be somewhere else. I knew that wasn't safe. But I didn't know where to go. So everybody started running. And then, seriously, 5 minutes later, it was New York cool again. Totally cool. I was walking down to Battery Park. I saw an old co-worker. Hey, Cynthia. Hey, Marianne. How's it going? I mean, the trade centers are on fire, and we're just kind of chilling and walking. I walked down to the subway in Battery Park, and I say to them, hey, a plane just crashed in the World Trade Center. This subway goes underneath that. We're not going anywhere. So this stranger, who became a friend, his name is George. George said, hey, let's go catch a cab. I'm like, George, I don't think we're going to catch a cab. So we start walking. Now we're at the tip of Manhattan. It's like Manhattan, and then the Trade Center, and then where I need to go. So George and I start walking, and he said, we're going to have to walk past this. And I said, I'm not walking past the World Trade Center, George. And he was like, it's the quickest way to get out of here. So I start walking with George past the World Trade Center. And I look up, and I see people jumping out of the Trade Center. And I said, George, those aren't people, right? Those aren't people. And he's like, no, Marianne, those aren't people. Keep walking. But they were. Every time somebody would jump out of that building, the people on the ground would look up and they would cry and wail and point and scream, and it was anguish, and it was awful. And what I found out later was a friend of a friend was on the 57th floor, and she had to walk down 57 flights of stairs to get to be safe. And she said when she got to the bottom onto the ground, she had to step over those people. And she said the only thing was left of them was hair and clothing. There was nothing else. So George and I are walking past the Trade Center, and people are jumping to their death. And I'm terrified because I think, oh my God, that thing's going to come down and it's going to kill me. And I'm trying to walk fast, but I was in high heels, you know. And George's like, come on, walk faster. And he's trying to help me. And the police are telling us, you know, don't look back, keep going, keep going. And they're trying to get everybody out of downtown. And just then we hear this rumbling noise. And I'm like, oh my God, George, that's not another plane, is it? That's not another plane. And I turned around and he said, no, the building's falling down. And I looked at it, and there was that huge ash cloud. And when that ash cloud hit, my friends who were down there said it was crazy. They said we were opening the doors. People were just running into our buildings. And there was a girl that ran into the building, and her face was covered with her hands. And she said to my friend, am I okay? And she moved her hands away from her face, and he looked at her, and he said, yeah, you're okay. And then she looked in the mirror, and she was covered in ash except for her face, and she started losing it. And my friend Anita said, when that ash cloud hit, she said, I covered my eyes, and then when I opened them, I was mad because I thought I was dead and heaven was ugly because everything was gray. So George and I continue to walk, and then we hear the Pentagon's been hit. So what we know now is the Trade Center has imploded, planes have hit it, and now the Pentagon is hit, and we are under attack. And I'm in New York City with a stranger that I don't even know, and we're just trying to get out of there. So I stop at an ATM, and I take some money out, and I get some water because it was a hot day. And the weirdest thing is all of these people were just standing around, staring down at the World Trade Center. You hear all the fire department, fire trucks and police sirens. All these sirens are going towards it. You know, the heroes run toward the building. Everybody else runs away. And but the weird thing was all of these cars, the doors were open, their windows were down, and the news was cranked. Not the music, the news. So we're listening to the news talk about what's happening, and we are watching it happen as it unfolds. And it was awful. I don't even know what to say. It was just terrible. So George and I part ways, and somebody's offering $5 a head to get us out of the city on a bus, and I paid it. Not out of the city, but out of downtown. So I paid him $5 because my feet were killing me. And then I finally had to make my way to Grand Central. But as I was doing that, there was a young girl on the phone. I heard her. She's crying to her parents saying, I don't know what to do. I don't know where to go. I mean, millions of people commute into New York City every day. Nobody knew what to do. You couldn't leave the island at the time. Manhattan's an island. I mean, nobody knew what to do. It was just awful. So finally I get to Grand Central and I get on a train. Now usually the trains are set up where you have the local train which stops at every stop, and then you have the express trains which stop at only a few stops. But that day it was just get the people out. Every stop, every train, every stop was a local, and everybody's on the train, and it was quiet. And everybody was thinking whatever they were thinking. And this is why I saw a girl looking out the window because it was on fire for a month, and you could see the black cloud, and you could just see a single tear rolling down her face. And there was a gentleman who was covered in ashes, just staring. People offered him a tissue. He said no. It was just the most somber, sad, I don't even know. It was just awful. So I made it home. Then I stayed home for 4 days. My feet were a mess because I was in high heels running around the city. And my job was, I couldn't go to work anyway because the New York Stock Exchange was closed down. But every day on TV, we would see somebody standing there with a picture of my mother, my father, myself. Have you seen my mom? Have you seen my dad? You know, we were just all praying that somebody somebody would be saved from that rubble. Just one person, it would have been great, but it didn't happen. Even the dogs were getting bummed out because they couldn't rescue anybody. So they actually had some people going underneath the debris so the dogs could actually feel good about rescuing someone because nobody was rescued. All of the EMS people, hospitals, doctors, everybody was waiting. People were lining up to give blood. Everybody was waiting to help. And sorry. And there was no one to help. So we go back to work. And all of those papers that were on TV were on makeshift walls in Grand Central. So every day I walked past, have you seen my mother, my father? Every day the newspapers profiled a new hero who had passed and about their life every day. So for months, and the building burned for a month, and it smelled like burning metal. It was a very weird smell. I worked downtown at the New York Stock Exchange. And, it was bad. It was a horrible time. It was a bad time, but what was really awesome about it is we all came together as a country. Everybody was a patriot. On September 12th, the next day, I remember saying, we got to get a flag right now, immediately. And everybody wore flag pins, and everybody loved this country. And we were so proud to be Americans. And they hate us, and I'm going to say this wrong, but they hate us because they ain't us. Everybody's jealous of our country because we're so awesome. And those people wanted to knock us down, and they couldn't, because the worst that they did brought out the best. There are so many heroes, so many people that did so many wonderful things. There was a guy, look him up, the red bandana guy. He called his parents, told him he was okay. Then he went in to save people, and he lost his life saving people. So many stories of people doing heroic things, just everyday people stepping up, doing the right thing. It's amazing. So after September 12th, everybody became patriots. Everybody loved this country. And it was a beautiful time to love your country, and we haven't come together like that in a really long time. And I'm sorry that I'm crying, but it's hard to talk about sometimes. A friend of mine who was in the Pentagon was supposed to give a speech on this, but he said he doesn't talk about this. He won't talk about this. And I understand. But what I want you all to understand is it's a real thing. It's not just something that happened in the history books. I mean, it happened to people. And I'm thankful that the people that I know and love are all okay. I didn't lose anybody in September 11th. And there were a ton of heroes down there. And, when people went down there, when it was no longer a search and rescue and it was a recovery, even when it was a search and rescue, people would line up along the streets just to clap for the others that were going in trying to help save people. All they did is they went downtown to Manhattan to clap and cheer as the other people went to rescue. I mean, everybody was united. Everybody was proud. It was a beautiful time. So some of these everyday people became heroes. And, when this event, whatever happens to your generation happens, you have a choice. Sorry. When you need a hero, look in the mirror, because maybe that's the hero that we need. God bless America. God bless our country. And never forget. And thank you for listening.